Welcome to another mindful mindset where what and how you think matters. This week, we're going to look at the relationship between stress and cortisol. Our July challenge is for you to de-stress, see what your stress level is at the beginning of the month, and then attend these little webinars. And today it will be about 10 minutes, just so that you know. And again, my name is Tracy Terrace. I am an author and speaker. I'm also a licensed marriage and family therapist, and I own a group private practice called Healing the Mind and Spirit, where we provide therapy for individuals, families, and couples and teenagers. In November, I will be releasing my first book this November. It is called Many Voices, One Truth: How to Sift Through the Competing Noises that Interfere with the Voice of the Savior. I use the analogy of broadcast networks because we are all familiar with broadcasting and the different television stations. And so in the book, I use this analogy that we have different networks. One is self, one is Satan, and one is society. And in it, I teach you how to differentiate between those voices and that of the Savior, Jesus Christ. And I also provide tools to teach you how to tune into Jesus's voice and tune out the voices that compete. So for today's session, what you can expect is learn how to decrease stress so that you can increase your ability to hear God's voice as opposed to all of those other voices we mentioned. And you'll learn about the relationship between stress and cortisol and three specific ways to reduce the impact of cortisol on your life. So here's a breakdown of the material. Last week, we covered the stress threshold. I'll mention that again this week. And if you have not received the evaluation, the stress evaluation, I'll have my assistant's email at the end of the presentation so that you can email her and get a copy of it, because you do want to see where you are now so that you can compare it where you are in 2 weeks. So again, today we're talking about de-stressing and on stress's relationship to cortisol. Next week, we'll talk about decluttering the mind and the role of sleep. So stress is an emotional, mental, and physical reaction to things that you have going on in your life. Cortisol is a hormone. It's our body's main stress hormone, and its job is to regulate our mood and to keep us motivated, but it has to all be in balance. So when it is not in balance, when it is, these are some of the things that it does. It regulates our blood pressure. It keeps inflammation down, and keeping inflammation down is good because it helps your immunity to do its job. Cortisol at its best will regulate your sleep and wake cycles, and it'll give you the energy to handle the tasks before you. When it is dysregulated, some of these are the systems that will be shut down, and it's your body's way of protecting itself. So when you have too much cortisol or you're too stressed out, you may find it difficult to digest your food. If you're a female and you've been trying to get pregnant and you can't, it may be that stress is getting in the way of that. There's other factors that could get in the way of your ability to be able to get pregnant, but stress will definitely have a negative impact on that, and it affects your immunity. When cortisol does not return to normal, then what ends up happening is the person remains on high alert. So the way it works is cortisol, there's a natural movement to it. It comes and it goes, it does its thing in your body. But when it doesn't return to normal, when it's working correctly, you'll feel balanced in your mood and you'll feel motivated. But let's say you're dysregulated because the cortisol is too high. So the cortisol will rise when there's a stressor, but what's supposed to happen is it's supposed to come down. But if you have a stressor and you're up here, and then another one happens and you just keep ratcheting and ratcheting up and you never return back, what ends up happening is your system stays on high alert. And when that happens, a regular stressful event or even a regular stressful season in your life can turn into anxiety and depression, have issues with your memory and concentration. You can end up gaining weight or having other changes in your body. So our July challenge is for you to de-stress, to re-regulate yourself. And so in the book, I address different things that get in the way of your ability to hear from God. And one of them is stress. And I talk about different types of distractions. And the one we're going to look at today is preoccupation, how preoccupation gets in the way of. So I'm going to read a little excerpt from my book. And here we go. Allowing yourself to be preoccupied increases your stress level. There is something I teach on called the stress threshold. We talked about it last week, and I'll just give you a really quick recap. It is the amount of stress any individual person can take before he or she reaches a limit that causes adverse reactions and behaviors. Some of these can include burnout, anger or hostility, vice, meaning substance abuse or use, eating or sleeping too much, spending too much, isolating, withdrawing from people, and somatic symptoms of headache, stomach ache, or other physical disturbances that do not have a medical basis. Stress is a strong hindrance to hearing God's voice because when people are in the throes of it, they can only perseverate on how overwhelmed they are. Though often used in the same sentence or interchangeably, stress and anxiety are two distinct things. They go together, yes, but one is a physiological response to the other. Anxiety results from how you are thinking about what's going on, which will impact how you feel. It is a state of being ill at ease in one's mind. Stress, on the other hand, looks more like panic as it has some of the same physical components of panic: racing heart, chest pain, a shift in your breathing, either rapid or shallow, or sweating. Left unattended, the stress response can become a daily part of one's life. If you've ever had a panic attack, imagine living in that state, living with those symptoms just mentioned from day to day, hour after hour. Yet, this is sort of what we inadvertently sign up for when we don't get a hold of ourselves and our thoughts. When we don't tune out the noise and tune into peace and quiet and tune into God. I'll have to write another book on the management of stress, or you can attend one of my workshops. But here I will list 3 ways you can push past stress to learn how to hear God's voice. And I call these 3 ways the 3 R's. One is release. And according to Psalm 56:8, God says he keeps track of our sorrows. He collects our tears and stores each one of them. I imagine he does this so we don't have to. Let him have that which causes you sorrow. Give it over. The invitation is there waiting for you. Accept it. Releasing allows you to let go of things that are not within your control anyway. So allow God what, if anything, he wants to do with them. Just give it over. Number 2 is recycle. This is what you do after you release it. Pray and ask God to take the circumstance and turn it into something useful for you, for people you love, or for his kingdom. There's a song with a lyric that says, "You make beautiful things out of dust. You make beautiful things out of us." This can be taken literally in that from the dust of the ground, God made man in his own image. Or it can be taken figuratively in that the things that blow our lives apart, when the dust settles, or even while the dust is still settling, God can turn that dust into something we never would have expected. So allow him to. And number 3, relate. In Isaiah, when it says, incline your ear to hear, it is actually talking about an orientation of your heart. Turn your heart toward God with the things that are causing you stress and anxiety. Turn to others as well. It is a good practice to learn who are the safe people in your life, people who will let you emote, not judge you, allow you to get it out without feeling the need for correction unless you ask for help in that department. Doing these 3 things will help you begin to meet yourself where you are, know your place and God's, and let him guide you to work out whatever is bringing stress into your life. And so that is just a little excerpt, and I'll read another excerpt next week with regards to stress. But if you have not received the Terrace Stress Threshold Evaluation, again, it is an assessment tool that I created for my clients to help them assess whether or not they are getting close to their stress threshold or whether or not they have crossed it and what they need to do about it. So if you're part of our email subscription list, you probably already have a copy of this. So just look on your computer. And if not, feel free to email Madison Jackson. She's my assistant at HMS for Harry Met Sally .Maddie Jackson, MADIJACKSON @gmail.com. And she will send a copy of it to you. This is what the stress threshold assessment evaluation looks like. Again, you would look at each one of these little boxes and circle the number that most closely resonates with where you are now and where you have been feeling in the last 2 weeks. In the field of psychology, we usually measure what your life has been looking like over the last 2 weeks to get an assessment of what's going on with you. So if you fall between one of these numbers, choose the one that most closely represents where you are today. It's a couple of pages long, but this is the last page. You would tally up all the numbers that you wrote, that you circled, tally them up, and it will give you an idea of where you are, whether this is normal, everyday, random stuff that's happening, or whether you're severely stressed out or bordering clinical anxiety, and then what you should do, whether reach out or delegate, whatever's going to be helpful for you. So next week, we'll look at decluttering the mind, and I will read an excerpt for you on decluttering the mind and how clutter gets in the way of hearing God's voice. So hope you've enjoyed. Again, look for my book to release in November 2022, Many Voices, One Truth. So do you guys have any questions? Any questions, ladies, before we head on out?
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. I just wanted to know, are you going to upload your 10-minute Zoom meetings on YouTube? Will these be on
yes.
YouTube?
Yes,
they will
be. I have a channel on YouTube, Tracy Terrace, and yes, they will be. My assistant will upload them for me. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. Because I'm not on social media right now because I'm trying to limit my stress level. So that's one of the reasons why I'm not on there. Okay, thank you.
You're trying to tune out the society voice.
Yes, yes.
Okay, you're welcome. Any other questions, ladies?
Just a comment, Tracy. I love the recycle. I had never heard it phrased that way, but I love, because I'm thinking of Romans 8:28, where it says all things work together for the good of those that love God. And so it's like, whatever that is that we need to recycle, that pain or trauma, how God's going to use it for something useful in our lives. So that was really powerful.
Yeah. And if I could do a plug for my friend and co-author, Miss Tracy Hester, she has a book that's out and it's called Get Up Girl, Let's Go. And then Donna Scott has a book out called The Tapestry of Trauma. And then Laura Simon, what's your book coming? When is yours coming out, Laura?
Mine comes out October 22nd, 2022. Did she say that out loud?
Yes. So these are some of my fellow authors. Please look on Amazon.com to support them. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate you all being here.